In my view, a culture's success should be judged by its outcomes, such as what quality of life does it produce, or what level of progress does it foster. These are the metrics, in my opinion, should be used to determine a culture's success. For example, I know a lot of Indians get upset because Indians have built great temples, great complex societies, but they've always been conquered by outsiders, first by Muslims and then by the Brits. And they always say, hey, we would have become first world had we not been colonized. Well, hello, whose fault is this? If you, a great civilization is not complete unless it can also protect itself by building armies. Okay. So I just saw this clip that went viral on social media when I saw a brave British woman. She's saying it as it is. She says British culture is superior to Pakistani culture. I think that's a very fair way of putting it. I've been saying this for a very long time, and I'm quite happy to see that some white people are now talking it like this. So have a look at this clip.
You keep bringing up Pakistan as a point around perhaps them being somewhat culturally inferior. I don't want to put words in your mouth.
This is actually very nice of her. I haven't watched the full debate, which I will. This is the full debate. You can go and watch it on social media. It's obviously 2 hours long, so I'm not going to play it to you right there. But if she's using Pakistan as an example, then that's actually very kind of her, because there are far worse examples out there. For example, Afghanistan. I purposefully choose a middle country, and I think Pakistan fits perfectly in the middle. Pakistan is not as tribal as Afghanistan, but obviously it's not a beacon of some superior culture either. And why not talk about it, especially when I was born in Pakistan? I don't use that identity because Pakistan is a political identity. Ethnically, I'm Punjabi. Culturally, I don't think you'll find any person who's more westernized than I am. And my flaws are Western too. So yeah, good honor for you for saying that.
You keep bringing up Pakistan as a point around perhaps them being somewhat culturally inferior. I don't want to put words in your mouth compared to perhaps other cultures like France.
I would say that British culture is definitely better than Pakistani culture, yes.
Well done.
Okay, fine. So what particular parts of Pakistani culture are inferior?
I would say the punishments for blasphemy.
But that's not part of Pakistani culture.
What do you mean it's not part of Pakistani culture? It is part of Pakistani culture. It is embedded in Pakistan's culture. Hundreds of people have been killed over blasphemy by Pakistani mobs. In fact, you could argue that the state of Pakistan, so a government is a representative of its people, and that is the case in Pakistan as well. So in Pakistan's penal code, the punishment for blasphemy is death. Okay, they don't carry out death sentences because of external pressures, because of pressure from Western countries. I think the European Union famously threatened Pakistan to get its act together and do not execute Asia Bibi, a Christian woman who was accused of blasphemy, which she hadn't done it. But even if she had done it, they threatened Pakistan that the EU will cancel its GSP plus status or something, which allows Pakistan to export its goods to the European Union without extra tariffs. So basically, free trade agreement. So Pakistan said, okay. So these are the reasons why the Pakistani state does not execute people over blasphemy. But there are dozens of people, probably around 50 so-called blasphemers. They're currently rotting away in Pakistani prisons. However, this is the reason why Pakistani people do not trust their legal process anymore. So what they do is they actually lynch people on the streets whenever someone is accused of blasphemy. So they say, well, what's the point of following the legal avenue? What's the point of following that when they're going to be not executed? So why don't we carry out the execution on our streets? It's happened to Mishal Khan. There's so many people it's happened. And over the years, I've covered so many of those incidents. I can't even remember their names. Mishal Khan is the most important one because when he was lynched by a mob over the accusations of blasphemy, that became a pivotal moment in my life. And that's when I decided to be an activist. Before that, I was quiet. I had been an atheist. I had been an atheist for 10 plus years at that point in 2017. When Mashal Khan, a university student, was killed by a mob over blasphemy accusation, that's when I decided to become an activist. So yes, it is wholly part of Pakistani culture. This guy doesn't know what he's talking about.
There are people who are executed for blaspheming against
What,
Islam
in
in Pakistan. Well, I know that Ahmadiyya Muslims suffer state-sanctioned persecution.
Okay.
Oh, don't even get me started on Ahmedi people. So Ahmedi Islam is a sect of Islam that the majority of Muslims do not acknowledge as part of Islam, but they see themselves as Muslims. So it is embedded in Pakistan's constitution that these people are not Muslims, even though they insist on being Muslims. So if you know how Muslims celebrate Eid and how Muslims slaughter goats and cows and whatnot on one of these Eids, Ahmadi Muslims are not allowed to slaughter animals. Ahmadi Muslims are not allowed to build their mosques that resemble mainstream Muslims' mosques, you know, like with minarets and whatnot. So there are dozens of videos that you can see where Pakistani mobs raid Ahmadi Muslims' houses just to see, hey, did you slaughter a goat as well? Because slaughtering goats is a Muslim practice. You're not allowed to do it. There's so many mosques. Actually, let me show you this. And no action is taken against them. I've covered so much of that. So this young woman, well done, is quite educated on what she's doing. Look at this. These Muslims, these Pakistani Muslims, are demolishing an Ahmadi mosque because mosques belong to Muslims, and since Ahmadis are not Muslims, therefore they're not allowed to have a mosque. It is embedded in Pakistani culture. And the state of Pakistan enables this bigotry. On Pakistan's passport, it is written that I acknowledge that Muhammad is the final prophet of Allah. They added that line in the passport just as a diss to the Ahmadis, because Ahmadis, that's where Ahmadis differ from mainstream Islam. They say Mirza Ghulam Ahmad Qadiani, who was born in the 19th century, they don't explicitly say that he's a messenger, but there's a little nuance that they have added which separates them from the rest of the Muslim community. Besides the point, what this woman is saying, Connie Shaw, what she's saying, she's spot on. It is state-sanctioned discrimination, state-sanctioned. And mainstream society, that is even more hostile towards Ahmadis than the state of Pakistan.
Okay. That's not Pakistani Islam, that's like Pakistan statehood.
Well, it happens in Pakistan. So if we have a lot of people from Pakistan coming to this country, it will start happening here. And it did in 2016 when a Muslim from Bradford drove all the way to Glasgow to murder an Ahmadiyya Muslim, even though he was a Muslim himself, for what he believed was blasphemy.
Okay.
That's an example.
But do you think that's a
something
totalizing view of Pakistanis and Pakistani culture? Or is that just, do you take that to be a majority?
Well,
it actually is a majority view. As I said, they legally passed that in their constitution, but in the 70s. And if you conduct a survey today in Pakistan, I would say 90% of the Pakistani population would say, yes, Ahmadis are not Muslims. Therefore, all of these discriminatory acts are justified. They may disagree whether you should go and demolish their mosques or not, but no one would dare to actually say it publicly. This issue of Ahmadi Muslim discrimination is so sensitive in Pakistan. This Ahmadi discrimination and blasphemy issue, these two topics are so sensitive that even the most popular politicians like Nawaz Sharif or like Imran Khan dare not to touch. So 100% it's part and parcel of Pakistani culture. And when you bring in those people to the West, to Britain that has moved on from sectarian politics, you are literally importing that kind of sectarian feuds into your country. Britain got rid of that 200 years ago. Pakistan is still living that culture. So so it's definitely an inferior culture.
the things that we're seeing in this country when we look at certain crimes, for example, the grooming gangs, it is a fact that Pakistani men are disproportionately represented in that. And that is a very
in that
specific
particular area, though, right?
Well, there's at least 50 towns and cities across the UK that we know that this crime has happened. Immigration from Pakistan has caused a lot of problems in this country. That's not to say that every Pakistani person or people who are descendants of Pakistanis who've come here have caused issues. But where we have huge issues of ethnic enclaves, for example, in Bradford, cousin marriage, and that's one one of the reasons why the grooming gangs were able to operate was because of the
Cousin marriage on its own is an indicator of a backward culture because, all kinds of problems that it brings.
kinship between the people who were raping girls. So many of them would be brothers, cousins, and because of the tribal nature of the family model in Pakistan, because of cousin marriage, that meant that ties between families were extremely tight in a way that we don't have that in Britain and most of the West, because cousin marriage was outlawed a long
Have you ever
time
spoken
ago.
to a Pakistani about this?
I haven't personally, but I
Connie, you can speak to me and I'll tell you, you're spot on. 100% she's spot on.
have done a lot of
I
research
think you tried to gaslight her.
into the grooming gangs and tried to understand and listened to experts on the grooming gangs. In what other culture can you imagine on mass scale where you would just call round some of your cousins or your brother or, your dad even to rape young girls?
No, obviously it's disgusting.
So from that particular culture, we have got now issues in this country as a result of mass migration from that culture.
That thing would not have happened if there were no Mirpuri Pakistanis or even Pakistanis in general in Britain. Okay? That's not to say British society doesn't have its own fair share of problems, but that doesn't mean that because you have your own fair share of problems, therefore you should import other cultures' problems too. Some cultures are inherently primitive, inherently backward. And as I said, in my view, you should metrics such as what kind of quality of life it produces, what level of progress does it harness, all of these things are good metrics to determine whether a culture is superior or inferior.
Talk about multiculturalism being an issue. A lot of the cultural issues that we're seeing in this country as a result of mass migration, it's from Muslim countries. The immigration to this country have really changed the way that our police force operate, for example, the way the justice system works, the way that people can and cannot say stuff in the workplace. It really has changed our culture to the point where we have the CPS trying to prosecute people for insulting the institution of Islam, or MPs in Parliament calling to make the desecration of holy books illegal, and our Prime Minister agreeing. I mean, there are so many examples that we see every day at the Free Speech Union of the influence of Islamic blasphemy laws by the back door having a real impact on our country, and that would not be happening without mass migration.
Absolutely. The conclusion is do not water down your culture to accommodate other cultures that are demonstrably inferior and backward. Spot on. Well done, Connie Shaw.